Hi, this is Shilpa here, and today I have one of the most important lessons. If you are a student or a practitioner looking to start a homeopathic practice very soon, or you want to create a long-term successful homeopathic practice. And if you look at my journey, then I've had a pretty good run, at least by the way I measure things. I've had the privilege to work with thousands of patients from all walks of life, from the farmers where I used to be in rural India to, corporates in Sydney, Australia. And today I have built a global practice where I specialize in providing an outcome in those patients who have tried homeopathy before, but where, indicated remedies have not worked. And based on my experiences, I've published my books, my courses, my online programs, and my stages template and framework has changed the way practitioners are looking at homeopathy today. And about close to now 6,000 members and students from about 74 different countries around the world are learning from my academy on learning how to use different creative strategies in homeopathy and create an effective outcome for their patients. But what you didn't see was that my business was not an overnight success, because I worked on it, and I wasn't born with any of this, of course. I didn't have anyone in my family who was a homeopathic practitioner to start with, or an existing base of patients to start with when I was a new graduate. I had zero experience on running any business, any successful business of any sort. And add to that, I started when I was just 22 years old, so I had no life experience or wisdom or confidence of any sort to get started. So, sometimes I wonder, where did this leap come from me starting out from my first patient to then growing this big, huge business. So you see, I've always had big dreams, but that was not enough. So, how did it start? And I think it all happened with a whole bunch of baby steps in the direction of my vision. And this for me is the most important lesson, that you need to absorb the idea of baby steps. And you see, you're not going to build any business, any dream business in a day. And I mentor students, and some of my students are now established successful practitioners, and they have successfully worked with hundreds of patients. But no one starts with 100 successful patients. They start with small success, one breakthrough at a time. And in my first year in practice, I probably had only 10 successful patients to start with. And then even to get to those 10 successes, there were a whole set of baby steps. Each consult was like one step further in my learning and my growth. And when I first started out, I figured out that I need to provide them an outcome in every consult, no matter what strategy I use. I was quite clear of that. So every time I had a case, I did something to get an outcome. When I failed, I worked twice as hard to get an outcome. So it meant, learning new homeopathic tools, studying new approaches, new remedy, getting out my comfort zone. If that was what was needed, then I did that. I could be researching known and unknown remedies from homeopathic books and journals. At times I could be researching clinical cases of just one single remedy to find its expression in different forms late through the night. So I remember once, when my practice had just started in Mumbai, that was really at the start, towards the end of my internship, and I did not have many clients. And I wanted to improve my success in children. So I went out and I met the principal of every local school in my area, and I offered them that I'll run a free children clinic on a weekend in the school itself. And as always, many of them, or I think most of them, said no. One school, a new school, finally agreed, and not because I had any great expertise or whatsoever. In fact, I was just an inexperienced practitioner, a 22-year-old at that time, and probably because they thought they were implementing a new program for parents and children who had learning difficulties, and they thought this would complement their program. And I had no experience whatsoever with learning disorders apart from basic skills I gathered in my pediatric OPD, right? Anyway, very soon I realized that while the so-called constitutional remedies worked in some children for their general health, it did not help their specific learning problem. And the parents wanted some specific help with their concentration, their memory, their reading difficulties. So one day I just sat down and I went through all these rubrics I remember in the Kent's repertory for all sorts of learning difficulties. And I distilled the key remedies that covered one side of the learning spectrum. And I found an interesting group of remedies like picric acid, kali silicata, agaricus, that I had never ever considered. And these key remedies helped me unlock cases where I could not find a definite constitutional, so-called constitutional. So in other cases, I decided to use another approach, where I was using group analysis or synthetic prescription. This was in those cases where well-indicated constitutionals like Baryta carbonica or silica or lycopodium worked, and then they stopped working after some time. So in some patients there were no peculiars in the child itself. So I experimented using the mother's pregnancy history or the father's history during conception. So if I step back and clarify what was happening is that I was not running after every new tool or approach in homeopathy and I was trying to fit it and attempt to use it in every new patient. It was not a new whim. Because this is exactly the recipe for failure. What I was doing was I was making a conscious decision to expand my toolkit and research the right tools appropriate for the challenge I had in front of me that did not respond to my regular approaches or tools. And then I took those baby steps. So I'm still a very big fan of learning new tools and from real clinical cases, that's the key, and implementing it in my practice to boost my success even to this date. So the bottom line is, yes, you've got to have that aspirations, those big dreams. It's really important to have that big vision that align with your calling. But then the reality is that you have to break them down into bite-sized pieces. And you take these baby steps in the right direction. And then there's one important component. You have to celebrate every success as you go along. When you lay down in bed every night, and I spoke about this in my last blog, think of 3 things that you want to be grateful for that day. You don't forget to be grateful for your accomplishments, your small wins. I would celebrate every small outcome I was able to provide my patients, every successful prescription, because that keeps you going. Because you see, there's no straight line to success. It's zigzag. I like the analogy of golf. I've heard someone say, this is like, it's a hole, and then rarely anyone hits a straight golf ball directly into the hole. What they're doing is they're correcting until they go closer and closer, and as you go closer, the corrections get smaller and smaller. And I think that's the way homeopathic journey is going to be. You're not going to make those right steps all the time. Some of those baby steps might be the wrong ones, but then you've got to find new ways, and you keep going, making those steps towards that goal, because that is the focus on progress. So take a moment and celebrate every step you've taken in the right direction, because that's going to inspire you to keep going. And that's what you would get you from your first patient to your 100, to your 1,000, and so on. And you build on that. And it's all about those steps. And don't beat yourself up. Don't try to conquer everything in a single day. Just go ahead, put in your baby steps, and I cannot wait to see how you go. Thank you.